Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Lee Zeldin might have given the nicest but firmest takedown of the mainstream media and their malfeasant reporting that I have ever seen. Let's dive in.
How is that zero evidence? How is that no evidence? How can any paper, Politico has written it, Washington Post has written it, the New York Times has written it, others have written that there's no evidence. And now we're all together, and I'm glad that we are. And it's April 21st? It's April 21st, 2025. Why should any story get written after today that says no evidence? Go ahead.
Just a question, sir. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Lisa Friedman with the New York Times. Where has a judge said that this is fraud?
I'm saying New York Times said it, Lisa. Lisa, if New York Times is going to write that there's no evidence.
Not true, sir. We've written that that judges have not found.
Okay, over the last
accurate?
few months, Lee Zeldin, Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, has made explosive, you know this because you wrote it, has made explosive accusations against the Biden administration, accusing it of insane malfeasance in its handling of $20 billion in climate grants. Now, as a legal battle ensues over those funds, many of Mr. Zeldin's claims remain unsupported and some are flat out false. Why wouldn't you write that there is any evidence?
Could you point us to where the judges have found that there's waste, fraud,
Oh,
and
see,
abuse,
it's
sir?
not that easy for you, Lisa. See, because you guys are writing stories. These are your words. These aren't the judge's words. So if you want to ask the question, I'm referring to one of your stories. And this came out before the judge's decision came out. Now, if you were to, did you read the judge's 39-page decision?
Sir, with all due
Have you read the
respect,
39-page decision?
We've read the decision. We are basing our reporting on judges' rulings before then and since, and I'm just asking you, sir, where has the judge found that there is waste, fraud, and abuse?
So you read the 39-page decision supporting a preliminary injunction? What? It's okay if you say no.
Yeah, no, I've read all of it.
Okay, that's okay. Nowhere in it does it acknowledge anything that I just said. It doesn't even acknowledge it. So if the New York Times wants to say that there is no evidence, and Politico wants to say it, and Washington Post wants to say it, and others want to say that there's no evidence. See, I have a job to make sure that I don't waste tax dollars. And then for people in the media to be willing to sacrifice your own integrity and the integrity of your paper to make a claim that there's no evidence supporting it, well, I could stand here before you, and I just went through a list of how many things did I just mention? 10? I don't know what the list is. And then you'll go out and write a story saying that there's no evidence of any wrongdoing. I have a duty to make sure that we don't light on fire billions of dollars of tax dollars. And I am, as administrator of EPA, not going to stand before any member of the media and get bullied into lighting billions of dollars on fire. And then you'll continue to write these stories that say that there is no evidence, even though I could stand before you right now and just go through the list. How do you square that?
May I ask, sir, do you feel confident that a court will uphold?
I'm asking you, how do you square that?
I'm asking
You
you
guys are
about
writing the
court
stories.
will uphold
Shouldn't
that
you
you
write
found
the
waste, fraud, and
story about
abuse.
what kind of evidence has been put out? Why not write the story? Why not write the story that says, hey, here's the 25 things that Administrator Zeldin says that he calls evidence. And then you could be critical of it if you want to. But how about instead of, why would you not write that story?
Could you speak, though, to why a judge has not supported this, has not said yes?
The district court judge didn't even have jurisdiction to hear the case. Why the judge writes a 39-page opinion and doesn't even acknowledge that this even exists? Go read page 29. Oh, this is a good one. You're a reporter for the New York Times. You're probably going to be all over this. Look at footnote 7 on page 29.
I will.
Okay, and the judge says that there was no action, no amendment that was made post-election. Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to the story that says, well, what about January 13th of 2025, 1 week before inauguration? The accounts were being amended. And then talk about what the amendment was. It was an amendment to reduce EPA oversight, to make it harder to conduct oversight. The judge actually says that nothing happened after the election. So I am imagining that you are going to be filled with so much outrage when you read that footnote to the judge's opinion that says that that doesn't even exist.
Again, Lee Zeldin came with the receipts. This should not have been hard for a reporter to understand, particularly if this reporter actually cared about the situation. But it turns out she doesn't. It turns out she works for the New York Times and only cares about smearing whatever conservative they can get their hands on. Well, folks, the days of kicking around Richard Nixon are over. Okay? There's a new sheriff in town, and we have come with the receipts. Because the conservatives here in America, the Republican Party, and Donald Trump and his own cabinet refuse to play this ridiculous game anymore, where they let the mainstream media shame them, particularly when said mainstream media constantly gets basic stories wrong. Okay? You would think that this reporter would do her due diligence, but once you realize that places like the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, these cable news outlets and these old print media outlets have one job, and that is to sell a headline. And more importantly, they've realized that they've got a captive audience. They have a whole bunch of people that will only accept certain kinds of garbage from their trash heap that they call a news organization, and they'll eat this slop like hogs. All right, this is not good for democracy. And what is it? It's not the New York Times slogan. Their slogan is all the news that's fit to print. Compared to the Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness. The very people who say that they are safeguarding our rights, after all, they're the ones talking about due process. They're also the very same people that won't bother to read a story, that won't question who actually has jurisdiction in certain cases, and then are trying to see if they can get Lee Zeldin caught between a rock and a hard place. And oh boy, did the president of not the president of the EPA, but the head of the EPA come with the receipts. May I remind you that the EPA is often misused and abused. It's weaponized against industries, all in order to ensure that a few certain rules that don't really need to be there are followed. It has absolutely nothing to do with actually protecting the environment anymore. There's also a report that I just saw the other day that almost half of Americans don't breathe in clean air. Weren't we supposed to have a Clean Air Act? I mean, speaking of Richard Nixon here, you'd think that that's what the EPA would be dealing with, but no, that's historically not what they care about at all anymore. They care about stifling industries to enrich their buddies. And as it turns out, speaking of enriching their buddies, this whole segment was brought about because these reporters wanted to ask, what is the evidence that the Trump administration, and in particularly the Department of Government Efficiency, is finding out that there's a whole bunch of kickbacks that are occurring where Democrats are basically getting free money from the federal government, and it's not directly. All right, there's multiple ways to make money in politics, and this is one of them. You get one of your friends or your family members into a business or into a non-governmental organization, you get a certain grant, and then they won't ask where that money goes. Ultimately, that money will somehow find its way back in certain people's pockets. This is how corruption works here in the West, particularly in America, and you know what? It's time to end. And this is what Lee Zeldin had to say about the situation. Zeldin criticized the New York Times, Washington Post, and Politico, all deserved, for suggesting to their readers that there is scant evidence to support the Trump administration's argument that billions of taxpayer dollars awarded to groups linked to Democrat insiders can be taken back at a press conference. In other words, this should be a bombshell story that any mainstream media outlet would be salivating to get their hands on, and as it turns out, they're kind of looking the other way. They're refusing to look at that evidence and look at it as potentially true. They're looking at it and immediately exclaiming, this is impossible. Well, guess what? When we shut down USAID, we started figuring out where all this money ends up going. And if you follow people like Mike Benz, who has been talking about this issue for the better part of the past couple of years, and is reminding people that, hey, this is how the CIA projects power. They take money and then they send it off to these non-governmental organizations through USAID, which, by the way, it doesn't mean US aid. What it essentially means is that the CIA can project soft power, and magically, we're finding that this money ends up going either to left-wing causes directly or right back to people with direct ties deep within the Democrat Party. This is a problem. This is corruption, and it's a waste of your taxpayer money. We don't need to be spending our money like this, and we definitely don't need it being taken from us, then put in someone else's pocket, to be put in someone else's pocket, then to be put in some Democrat or some cases Republican's pocket. I talked ad nauseum before about the fact that both Joe Biden and Mitt Romney have kids on Ukrainian oil company boards after the magical coup in early of 2014. This is one of the easiest ways to get money back to the big guy, as it were, for Joe Biden. And it looks like we're finding another treasure trove of money that is being wasted and ultimately used as corruption and graft. This needs to end in order to preserve our nation and our democracy. And you think that Democrats who have been screaming about preserving our democracy for the past 6 months now, you think they'd care about this? Well, guess what? They care because they're getting kickbacks. Mainstream media outlets care because they're getting kickbacks. We found out that USAID was the #2 fundraiser for the BBC. This is all connected, folks, and they're screaming because they realize that their life savings are being found, and they found their illegal Swiss bank accounts or their illegal accounts in the Cayman Islands. And guess what, folks? The gravy train stops here. And Lee Zeldin gave the nicest takedown you might ever see, because he sounds more like a disappointed teacher than a righteous warrior. And folks, that's exactly who you want fighting for you. That's exactly who I want in the Trump administration. This is what America needs to be great again. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.